Hey, this is Fred from the Fly Project, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Trout Spey. This is my current favorite Trout Spey setup. Many anglers are interested in Trout Spey. I mean, they see people casting that know what they're doing, they get excited about it, but they're often confused or intimidated by all the tackle choices. So we're going to just briefly break down the way you would set up your rod for Trout Spey, and then we'll go from there. So there are a couple of line choices. The most common and the one that we recommend for people when they're just getting started is to go with the Skagit System. And the Skagit System allows you to attach floating, intermediate, or sinking line tips, so you can cover all your bases as far as whatever your needs are. So going from the very tip of where things get started, of course you're going to have tippet on the end of your system. And generally speaking, we're just looking for 3 to 5 feet of relatively heavy stuff when we're throwing streamers. So just some good old Odex fluorocarbon, or you can just use 8 or 10 or 12 pound, standard line off of a spool, and that's going to go on the end of your system. And then we have a sinking tip. All Skagit lines are designed to be finished with a tip, and that tip can be floating, intermediate, or different densities of sink. And that just loops on to the head of the Skagit line, just in a loop-to-loop connection right here. So then our Skagit line, we have two different choices for how we're going to go about that system. There are heads, which are short sections of just the thick portion that you actually cast, and those can be looped onto a running line. And the running lines typically that we use for Trout Spey are a little bit lighter than you'd use for salmon or steelhead. But we don't usually use coated lines. The monofilament is just really slick and smooth, and generally a 30 or a 40 pound mono is just the perfect way to go. A lot of guys, when they first get into this though, they find that it's easy just to go with what we call an integrated line, and that would remind you of your standard fly line. So an integrated line has the thicker head portion at the end, and then it just transitions into the thinner running line. So there are no loops in the middle, and this integrated line has actually got what we call the hang down portion, or the casting zone marked dark, so it's really easy to set that up when you're getting ready to make your cast, so you know exactly where the head portion finishes and where you want your line to be started on the cast. So this is a really easy system, and something that most people like when they're getting started. It also allows you to retrieve your fly all the way through the guides without running into those loops. So some guys will appreciate that. When casters get really proficient and often begin to use more and more running line, then most of them will switch to a monofilament running line, because you can cast 40 feet of it or more really easily and handle it without much problem. It's less likely to get tangled up and has less resistance in the water than the thicker coated line. So, I mean, bottom line is you have to choose your line, and Skagit's the way to go when you're first getting started. And then when it comes to matching it to a fly rod, it's no different than matching your single hand line up to your fly rod. There's different slight variances in tapers and line weights, but the best thing to do is just to reach out to us in the fly shop. And if you pick a rod, we will make sure that you pick the right Skagit line to go with it. And then we can also help you select the tips that you will need to balance out, your fishing needs, whether it's an intermediate tip, if you're not trying to get too deep. The 5x5, which is this mow tip, has 5 feet of floating and 5 feet of sink. And then if you need to get that fly even deeper, then you can go with a straight 10 feet of sink. So those are just a couple of many different options that are available. We can help, we can match it up, and we love to get you going in the Trout Spey game. If you have questions on any of this or other things that we haven't touched on, please leave those in our comments. And if you have some really good questions, we might even follow up with a video to answer your questions. Thanks for watching, and you can shop us at flyproject.us. Tight lines.